Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. We've heard from government, the IMF, and other development partners. But what about those who feel the heat of this program? Well, I'm talking about businesses. So has this program, that is the IMF program, brought about the expected stability and restoration of confidence in the economy? Are they getting the contracts and the deals? Well, this is what we'll be trying to get some answers on PM Express Business Edition tonight, as you look at Ghana's IMF program and impact on businesses. We'll be engaging, that is Magbedu Abuaji. He is Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he is with me in this studio here. And Joe Jackson is Director of Dealers Finance. That's the Director at Dealers Finance. Chimoko Boy, CEO, Association of Ghana Industries, and also Dr. Patrick Okofori, his Chief Executive, Bulk Oil Distributors Company, that is here in Ghana. With all these CEOs from different sectors of the economy, well, they are best to tell us the story about what is happening in the business space as you look at PM Express Business Edition to talk about the IMF program and how that is affecting the business community. My name is George Wiafe. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the IMF program and the impact on businesses in this country. So we've heard from the development partners and we'll talk about confidence restoration, stability of the economy. How are these businesses feeling in terms of the expected impact of this program on the operations? We have with us here the Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is with us in studio here, and the rest are also connecting via Zoom to participate in this discussion about the fund program. And let me start first with you. I mean, we were looking, last year, signed the program. Now we have signed the program. Are we feeling that impact of that confidence restoration and maybe that stability and those contracts, those deals? Are they now coming through, or still our expectations were heightened too much?
Well, I think the deal was the only way out of our economic woes. But I also think that some of the impacts may not be immediate.
Wow.
In the sense that I have a feeling it will get worse before it gets better.
Interesting.
The reason being that some or most of the conditions were preconditions. They were uploaded, the prior actions that we have to meet before we get the money. Talk of the taxes, and now the automatic adjustment of utility tariffs. These are all part of the things that were considered before the money was given to us. So on that score, we realized that that aspect of cost of doing business is going up. But I've seen some stability when it comes to the exchange rate. We were expecting that at least the cedi will put up a strong performance against the major trading currencies just by the announcement.
There was a flip-flop. Yes. It went up strongly. Yes, it has recovered, slowed down a little bit.
It's depreciating a bit. But I'm very optimistic that the economy will rebound. But it will take some time. So my advice is that we should brace up for a difficult period for this year. Of course, if you look at the GDP growth of 1.6, as proposed by even the IMF and the World Bank, it surely shows that economic activity for this year will slow.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the beginning of good things to come. So I think we were all too expectant. So we were expecting that right after the announcement, we would have seen a massive change in the macroeconomic environment. But it wouldn't work like that.
But I wanted to find out on the bit about the stability. I knew businesses who told me that, George, prior to us Ghana signing this program, we were having partners who were saying that if you don't get this program, we won't conclude these negotiations or sign this deal that can bring in some financing assurance on the private level. There were a lot of people who had their deals locked up. Have we seen those deals now moving ahead because we have a program?
Yes, I think there's a positive sign. The fact that the announcement was made, the fact that the deal is ongoing, people have now developed that confidence in our economy. We've heard of those who, prior to this deal, were sitting on the fence looking at what will happen. After that, there have been a number of calls congratulating us, at least for the fact that we've been able to strike this deal and the fact that it will bring confidence back into the economy. So I believe that within the next few months, things will improve. We are likely to get a lot of funding coming in. Even if you look at the support that has been announced by the World Bank, it clearly shows that after this policy credibility, the structural reforms that will come with it will also bring in a lot of money from development partners. And then the private sector, I strongly believe that people will now begin to invest in the economy.
Interesting. I'll be coming back to look at the conditionalities and the taxes issues and all the rest. And what about how your members are bracing themselves for it? But let me also connect via Zoom and bring on board Dr. Patrick Okofori, the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. And I know that's a very delicate industry, and even prior to this program and all the challenges that you've been going through, and how are things now? Doc, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. And for you and your members in a very capital-intensive industry, has things stabilized for you, or still you're yet to get there?
Yeah, I was. Good evening, George, and good evening, colleagues, and good evening to your listeners. At least I can say confidently that it's giving us a bit of a sign of hope based on the announcement alone, judging from the situation that we found ourselves in last year, especially the last quarter in October, there, whereby Forex FX availability was even a challenge, and then also the rate at which the CD was depreciating, which also made it difficult for us to even conclude business. It's giving a bit of hope to our international partners, especially the IOTCs that we are dealing with, to also be able to extend further credit. And most importantly, we are sure that it will bring that element of stability with which we'll be able to plan and then also be able to secure the necessary capital in the form of either LPs or open credit from our major partners.
Doc, I'm very interested in the bit about the LCs and the credit from those partner banks and the correspondent banks as well. Have we seen a change in the posture of these international banks in dealing with your members, or it is still the wait and see, Bank of Ghana trying to restructure the system and all the rest? Are things moving for you guys and your members, or it is still at that nil rate?
No, I think there are two major decisions that the governor and the central bank took last year that really safeguard the country. I think this was a key decision that was led by the Ministry of Energy and the governor. One, the introduction of the BDC Forex auction. When our partners got to know that at least there is a central bank commitment, because it got to a point in time that the BDCs had cedis sitting in the account but could not actually even get dollars to buy in order to import the needed petroleum product that was coming into the country. So you look at the data, and clearly, for us, from 2019 coming, there has been some form of increase in consumption of petroleum products. It was only 2022 that we had a negative demand, where demand for petroleum products, or the quantity that we imported, decreased by about 9% or so. So clearly, when Bank of Ghana came in with that single action, it prevented the country from grinding to a halt, because at least the bulk distributors could still import, knowing that on a 2-week or monthly basis, you are guaranteed of at least, I think they started with about 200 million or so dollars that consistently helped, gave confidence to the IOTCs who were giving the open credit. When we also had issues with what the second intervention that the governor did that I think is also commendable, was when, through our discussion with the Association of Bankers, we approached them about the single obligor limit, the SOL limit, because obviously the currency has depreciated so much so that at the beginning of the year, if we're able to import products worth, let's say 60 million Ghana cedis, to import products worth $10 million. By November, October, you needed over 120 million cedis to be able to import product that was worth $10 million. And that was also a bit of a challenge to the banks because that also moved them beyond what a single bank can expose an individual entity to, which it obviously impacted on our operations and our members' activity. So the two decisions that the governor and his team did was something that really saved the country, and I think they require the needed commendation for that. But there are a bit of hope and confidence because now you see the major IOTCs coming in and referring to the IMF, and even before that, it was like we're all looking forward towards that. I see the child is waiting for Christmas, and with the announcement, we all saw the relative stability that came within the week, but still better than a situation that we had last year, whereby within a week the currency went down about 4 cities. That really affected your ability to plan. And then even if you plan with all whatever measures, you still struggle to make ends meet because you were recording some element of trading losses, which most of our members are yet to recover from.
Doc, I'll be coming back to you on the conditionalities because there are some proposed conditionalities that could have some impact on your operations going forward. They talk about the FX supply and even the gold for oil program as well. Let me bring in, that is Joe Jackson, Dalex Finance, the financial sector. Some would say the heat of this program. How are things going for you people in this space? And are things moving that fast for you now or still? There are some challenges, Doc or Joe. Doc, Joe Jackson, can you unmute, please? And I was asking about how are things shaping now for those in the financial space, including your company, now that we have this program? Are things getting on right, or still there are some uncertainties and things are not moving as expected?
Well, first of all, good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to your listeners, and good to see you, sir. George, good to see you. Listen, for the financial sector, obviously the domestic debt exchange program had a significant effect, and that was a major challenge. But that challenge is now, as we say, it's been written into the books, and some institutions took really heavy losses. But those losses have now been taken care of, and there is certain level of stability. The challenge, though, is that with those losses recorded, some of the balance sheets are looking relatively weak. And the challenge ahead is, how do you restore those challenges? It did not affect their liquidity as much as we thought it would. So there's relatively good liquidity in the market. The worrying signs or the risks around the issues of interest rates. And since the central bank still continues to pursue an interest rate policy designed to bring down inflation, rates are still high.
Inflation targeting, you're saying?
Yes, and rates are high, and that has an effect. On the other hand, the FX market has been relatively stable. It took a dip and it came back again. The only challenge is that for so long as we have not finished negotiating all the other bits and pieces of the IMF deal, we haven't signed off the foreign bond holders. We haven't signed the domestic dollar-denominated bond holders. We haven't signed off the pension companies. There's still issues hanging about the individual bond holders who have not been paid, and so on. It means we haven't crossed all the I's, dotted all the I's, and crossed all the T's. So there is some volatility in the market because the IMF deal has been signed, but not all the issues have been dealt with as comprehensively as we would have hoped. And for so long as we're waiting for those issues to be dealt with, there will be some volatility in the market. But things are relatively stable. The next hurdle is how to deal with the impaired balance sheets of the institutions. And already there's been some noise from the central bank saying in September of this year, they would like to deal with that issue. So we're all waiting, and there's talk of encouraging another round of mergers, acquisitions, and the like. And so if you're in the financial institution, you're looking at your balance sheet and wondering, are you in line to get for any of these actions? And you start planning for it.
Jackson, I'll be coming back to you about what this also means for the clientele of yours as well when it comes to credit extension and then renegotiating those loans. But Chuma Kwabwa, Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, are the fortunes looking that good? Listen, we are still down there.
Well, good evening, Joy, and good evening to your viewers. I think the story of industry is not different from what you've heard from other colleagues, analysts. We've all experienced some good stability. We didn't say it's so good, but compared to the recent past, this is relatively better. And I think it stems from clearly the IMF intervention that has come in. And I must say that even before the IMF intervention, I think the discussion went on for quite some time. And prior to the final announcement, there were discussions with the key players, discussing with the Paris Club, the Chinese, and all that. And I think, generally speaking, the fact that they all agreed to our debt arrangement helped the situation. So before the announcement, we saw the stability. And throughout the first quarter, I think we've seen some reasonable stability, and it's helping industry a great deal. Because for industry, stability, macroeconomic stability is key, as we always say. And I could tell this from the business barometer. We normally speak to figures and facts. And our first quarter business barometer clearly shows that confidence level has gone up compared to the quarter before. I must say that for the past 5 quarters, we've always stayed below the baseline. So it shows how deteriorating the situation has been. We've always stayed below the 100 baseline. So we are still below it. It means confidence level generally is low, but comparatively, it's gone up a bit. It's gone up significantly compared to the last quarter. It dipped in the last 2 quarters to 74.2, and now and then rose to about 76 point something. Today is 87. So we are inching up, and it tells you that confidence level is gradually coming up. And that, for me, is the effect of the IMF intervention. Having said that, I think for businesses, and I remember prior to the IMF announcement, I had lots of discussions. Some of the multinationals were sending officials to Ghana and talking to people like us, asking whether the IMF deal will come in, and asking whether the stability will be sustained, and asking whether we are out of the woods. So many questions. There's a lot of uncertainty. And every year they plan. When they plan their investment. What is it that I'm going to invest this year? And they have other options. They can go to other countries. So their plan for Ghana was virtually being curtailed because of the uncertainty. And I'm happy that the assurance we gave them, from our perspective, we believe that the IMF deal will come up. And I'm happy that finally it came on, and I'm sure with that, it will help their investment decisions. So it's helped a great deal. Stability is good, but as has been expressed by other panelists, its positive effect, apart from the stability, it will take a while. In terms of price rises or inflation, we've also seen significant gradual drop in inflation levels. I mean, if you look at the figures, way back in December, it was 54.1, then January 53, February 52. So it gradually coming down. In April, it was 41. So that in itself is good. It shows that price increases are also on a downward trend. And it tells you that businesses are accepting the current development and incorporating that in their investment decisions, incorporating that in their pricing, and therefore it's positive for all. The sustainability of it is key. How do we sustain this going forward? And that, for me, is the most critical thing.
I'll be coming back to you to get your thoughts about the impact of this in terms of expansion or at least keeping the current core of workers and even the operations as well. That's a searching of cover. But with your budget, I mean, whilst we get excited a little bit about the marginal stability, which for you, and I remember I engaged some businesses and even about the exchange rate. I mean, there are some who told me that, George, we don't even care if today the exchange rate is even 1 to 50. That as long as we are sure that for the next even 1 month is at that rate, we can then plan. So we might celebrate that marginal stability, but also when you go through this program, government is supposed to undertake some actions that could come with some shocks for your operations.
Yes, of course. We all know that this IMF deal comes with conditionalities. Yeah. Whether we set them or they set them for us, the most important is that this conditionality.
They claim the government made a proposal and they approved it. Yes. So it's government economic program. They backed it.
They backed it. That is fine. But if you peruse the document, you realize that definitely there will be shocks in terms of some of the taxes that they have proposed, some of the waivers and other things that they have proposed. So definitely these shocks should be there. If you look critically at the area of the monetary policy and that of the exchange rate, one thing that really hit me was the fact that proposing a tightening of the monetary policy, even if the policy is at 29.5 and they are proposing that for us to be able to get inflation to the level that we require, they have to tighten it. Yeah. I was a bit worried, but looking at the recent announcement by the central bank, which retain or maintain the policy rate at 29.5, definitely means that interest rates are going to remain almost the same for this period of time. I'm hoping that they will not increase it further. For if they do, then the obvious reason is that interest rates are also going to go up. And the reason for which we want to use that to bring the inflation down, we may not be able to achieve it. Yeah. So businesses, that is one thing that I've said, that there is the need for us to analyze this IMF deal very well.
Isn't it too late? Some will say, because the required consultation maybe wasn't done prior to getting this thing going through, and now the horse is out of the stable. I mean, what can we do now?
I don't think it's too late, but I think that it would be suicidal for anybody to think that they can ignore businesses and private sector and expect that you achieve all the.
But the fund program pushes, and I want to get your thoughts, and I'll get there, pushes for more stakeholder input, stakeholder being brought on board with respect to the communications and all those things.
Exactly. So, if you read at, I think, item point.
There's a portion in the program,
clearly states that the success of this program depends on the stakeholder engagement and awareness that they will create for people to get a buy-in and support this program. So if you want to achieve the objectives, then everybody, all stakeholders, should come on board, should be involved. Well, during the negotiation stages, businesses were largely ignored because we made several proposals, several arrangements. No, I mean
several proposals like what?
They were bringing
don't tax
issues. Well, petitions were sent to the president, and it was totally ignored. But now I think that now that the program is in and they are asking us that we make contribution to the success of this program, all stakeholders should be engaged. Core businesses, let them know that for this program, these are the conditionalities. In this period, these are how you are supposed to position yourself. If there are any mitigation measures, share with us that for this period, you are supposed to do ABC, and then give an assurance that things will be better. This is how you get people to support the program. But if you leave it like that and expect that people will buy into your program and support you, we may not achieve the objectives.
We understand that the IMF team should be in town today if they're not already in. And part of their engagement is that they're going to engage more stakeholders to ensure that they get the buy-in from all the actors in the economy.
For me, this is the right way out. And I expect the managers of the economy to have started this even before the IMF. The IMF has shown positive signs. They are willing to engage us, to even consider our proposals, so that in the next review of it, whether the budget or the review of the program, they can factor in the concerns of businesses. And for me, that is key. We are all in support of this program. because of the stability and certainty that we have all spoken about, which we need as businesses. But don't leave the businesses out of the total discussion. Let them know what is going on. And I think that if you want people to pay the taxes, who are those paying the taxes? It's the businesses. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong bringing them to the table. They are the one bearing the brunt of all the increases in taxes, all the automatic adjustment in utilities and all those things. Bring them around the table. This is what we have. What is the way forward? What is your contribution? We can't change anything, but at least listen to us. And then all of us will move the economy forward.
Some have questioned the structure of the program itself, and it appears that it leans more to revenue in trying to correct the challenge that we've been through. Some are also saying that it should be more hard on the fiscal, the expenditure. What are your thoughts as a business person as well, and your members in terms of the structure of this program being more heavy on revenue? That means that, listen, more taxes, more measures that would actually improve revenue collections. And that could again come with some shocks for businesses like yours and your members.
Yes, I totally agree with that assertion. I mean, if you read through the program, you realize that it's more of, in the statement, it's an aggressive revenue mobilization. And when you say that, it means that you are going to either introduce new taxes, increasing the existing ones, or some waivers that businesses were enjoying, you are going to take them off. And that shows the level at which this is going to impact on businesses negatively. And also looking at the fact that there's going to be automatic adjustment of utility tariffs. Yeah. They also impact on businesses. I read somewhere that there could be an ad hoc adjustment of utility tariffs. That if the quarterly adjustment is not sufficient, they can come in and do an ad hoc adjustment, which will affect businesses. I was expecting a fair balance between revenue generation and expenditure management. I didn't see a lot of this expenditure rationalization in this document. For me, that is my major concern. Revenue is important, but anytime you are introducing a revenue-generating activity or action, you look at the impact on those who are going to pay the taxes. Businesses already are suffering. You introduce 3 new taxes. You are proposing that you are going to introduce more. For me, if you are not careful, by the time we are done with the IMF, the environment that we want to create, the stable environment, the businesses may not be strong enough to take advantage of, and it is going to affect all of us. So there should be a fair balance. Once the environment is created, which for me is a necessary condition, the sufficient condition for growth is for businesses to be there, to be strong, to be able to take advantage of the environment that you have created, to expand. Once they expand, you all know the effect of businesses expanding. They will pay more taxes, they will employ more people, and the economy will grow. It is an inclusive growth that we are looking for. Growth that will lean towards only one sector of the economy will not help us, and will not help us.
Talking about growth, when you talked about stability as well, in the past there were concerns about the current challenges that we're going through and the impact on expansion. I'll go to industries as well, AGR. With this program and what is happening right now, are we now going to see businesses now staying alive and even expand, or we're still going to see that marginal cuts and containment of your operations?
Well, I think for now, we have factored in all these proposals into our activities. I'm very hopeful that for now, businesses will stay as it is now, looking that things will improve. I don't expect that businesses will be laying off people just like that, because I see that there is hope.
The outlook is good.
Outlook is good. But as I've said, it will get better. Yeah. But for this year, things will be a bit rough. So if you are taking a decision for the year, you should know that these adjustments are going to affect you. In taxes that have kicked in from the beginning of June, it's also going to affect you. Yeah. And one trend that I've had reports from people is the downward trend in revenue. People are saying sales have gone down, their revenue are going down, and they are also concerned about increase in cost, which will affect their profit. So that is one concern for me. That is very worrying. I don't know how we're going to, but I've had consistent reports from businesses telling me that there will be some reduction in revenue.
Interesting.
But I strongly believe that we will see through this difficult.
And that is as a result of some of these tax measures that were introduced, right?
Exactly. And of course, for this year, we don't expect that people will make a lot of profit. Even looking at the economic activity, as I said earlier, if we are all predicting that the GDP will grow by 1.6, which therefore means that economic activity is going to slow down. And then the next year, it will pick up, and then subsequently, it will pick up. And I think the reason being that, as I said, most of the conditionalities were front-loaded. So now we are feeling the pinch. We are bearing the brunt of this condition. Once we get used to it, the good things will follow.
Let me come to Dr. Patrick Okufo, and I'm very interested in this sector because of the impact on the supply of petroleum products. If you go through the program that government did submit to the IMF that was approved, there are proposals to review Bank of Ghana's intervention in terms of FX supply and even the Gold for Oil program. So in trying to look at the real impact of this program on the finished petroleum supply in terms of fuel prices and all the rest, how should we look at things going forward? Are we still going to be assured a regular supply of products on the market, or more of this to ensure that we pay realistic prices, just like what happens when it comes to tariffs?
Thank you. Thank you, George. I think you are right, but the key to some of these discussions is that we needed to have engaged broadly before this point. And some of the key elements, we should have also looked at it from contextualizing the issues that happen. You check most importers, and especially I can speak for the BDCs, were very hit with the depreciation of the cedi last year, that most of them have not really recovered. So when you come into a program like this, and with the introduction of other taxes, and then also other government interventions that they are trying to use to have the situation without being able to contextualize it based on sector or an industry specific, it makes it difficult for you to get a holistic approach in dealing with the issue, and then prevent a situation whereby in your quest to address a national problem, you may end up creating others which may also pull other related services or companies or livelihoods along that may be dangerous. But that notwithstanding, we cannot just discount the importance of IMF coming to town. If for nothing at all, now, like my colleague said, even if I know the dollar is 50 cedis or even 10 cedis, I'm assured that there is availability of it, rather than having a situation whereby you have cedis sitting in your bank account and you will still not be able to do that. And this is where I buttress the point that when IMF want to maybe direct the central bank, or want to come up with reviewing an intervention that they use to help address it, you can clearly see that they were not necessarily looking at some of the data that were presented. You look at somewhere December, and then the periods in which the Bank of Ghana was able to supply the BDCs about 60%. I think there were points in time that it was 80%, 83%, and then there was also 85% of their dollar request. When these came on, the prices of petroleum products and then along that side was a bit stable and relatively cheaper, and then also ensure that people could go about their business normally. But when you don't look at that situation, and then people think that it was more or less a cheap dollars that the central bank was giving, and then there is other commentary that seeks to go against the central bank, that they were providing somehow 3 or so different rates in the market. That was never the case.
But Doc, what I want to get from you, and sorry for the rude intervention, is that there are calls for a review of these forex intervention and all the rest. What could be the impact on your business and even the supply of the commodity on the market? And that's what I want to get based on what you got from your
once IMF is in town, in terms of, and don't forget, George, product availability and supply security has never been in doubt. And that is one thing that I think we need to commend the minister and the central government for introducing this particular policy that IMF is telling them to do that. So even in the height of the Russian-Ukraine war, product availability in the Ghanaian market, like we happen even in France and other parts of the world, was never in question in Ghana due to the efforts of the BDCs and the other state entities, that partnership that we're able to form to ensure that we're all able to move about through our daily program. What they are suggesting will not have, it will affect pricing, but not necessarily availability.
Oh, so I should prepare to pay. Should I prepare to pay more for a fewer prices, irrespective of what is happening in the international market?
No, you look at some of the recommendations that the IMF program is even suggesting, is that they need to also adjust the levies on forex when the foreign exchange changes. So you will not necessarily be hit by only what the price build-up is. You are also most likely going to pay levies according to, it's more or less, the levies are also going to be dollar denominated. So as the currency depreciates, you expect that they are going to push it up.
So Doc, as a consumer, I mean, this bit is very interesting for me. I should brace myself to pay more for prices of petroleum products based on these recommendations that should have been done long ago in trying to deal with the debt situation in the energy sector. And that's right.
The energy sector debt is a bit different from.
I know, but the question is here that based on these reforms, I should brace myself to pay more for prices of petroleum products.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So okay. if the policy is able to ensure that the city will perform better against the major currencies, for the last analysis that we conducted, we all realized that the city is a major predictor in how much the exchange rate is a major predictor of how much you pay at the pumps. So if the program is able to enhance the performance of the city, then we could have some relatively positive indicators in the market. But the bit about reducing the forest auctioning may also come with its challenges, because we may have a situation whereby I will lock in for forest from a different, also about 3 or so different banks, demanding for, let's say, 3 million from EcoBank, 3 million or 5 million for these banks. These create some form of artificial demand, whereby in actual sense, I was just in need of, let's say, $5 million. But because I know one bank cannot give me, and I cannot access that from the central bank, who have visibility of all these currencies within their setup, I will be placing orders with different banks, which creates artificial demand for the currency that may, in a long run, hinder the ability of the city to perform well within the market. So that is where the catch is.
I'll come back to you on the gold for your program, because again, the program tries to make some recommendations there, and some say that it falls in line with the concerns by some of your members. Say, Chuma Kobwa, we are celebrating this program. I mean, the fact that it's brought the stability. But utility tariffs, your members are complaining badly. It appears that some of these conditions could even take you guys back, whilst we also get excited about the stability that we are experiencing.
Well, it depends on how the whole thing is managed. Of course, increase in utility tariffs is a challenge to most businesses, especially what we've experienced over the past few months. Since last year, September to today, if you take electricity, we've increased it by more than 70-something percent. Water within one tranche, some of the companies even experienced 300% increment in water tariff in one go. Of course, later we did a lot of advocacy, we got it reduced a little bit. So it's part of the challenge. However, As for the automatic adjustment formula, it is something that we have always asked for, because we keep saying that there's no point keeping electricity tariffs at a certain level and not adjusting at all.
But government has had failed to implement this thing, and now it's being pressed down your throats, and it comes to
exactly the point I'm making, that if you wait too long and then suddenly jump it to a very high level, it destabilizes the companies, it distorts their plans, and that is what we should avoid. So I'm making a point that when it comes to the automatic adjustment formula, we want it well implemented. And if we do that consistently and reasonably, we shouldn't see the kind of jumps we are having. So, for example, the water tariffs for a particular category going up by 300%, it's never done anywhere in the world. So that's the kind of challenge we have. I wouldn't attribute that solely to the IMF intervention. I think it's a bit of indiscipline in our system, and it's good that we correct it. But correcting it, we shouldn't correct it overnight. It should be spread over a period so that the companies can conveniently absorb it. So that is fine. But I think that when it comes to the impact, it is very important that we appreciate it from the different angles that we are talking. The impact on businesses, there's positive side, the stability is helping, planning is in place, people can then have confidence to invest. But the effort to mobilize revenue is in principle is also good. But where are we mobilizing the revenue from? I think so far, the few examples we've seen is taxes on very existing companies that are consistently and always paying the taxes. And that is where we have a challenge. So when you are mobilizing the revenue and it's coming from the same source, then you have a problem because you are not widening the tax net. If you widen the tax net and as a result of that, we cash in more and generate more revenue, it's all good for the country. When it comes to government expenditure also, we say that government should be prudent, efficiency in expenditure is so important. But we must also take account of the fact that if government expenditure comes very low, it has effects on the economy as well, because government is the single largest procurer of all goods and services. So what we're asking for is efficient procurement, but not necessarily reducing expenditure to the barest minimum. Now we're saying that there will be zero borrowings from Bank of Ghana, and we are excited about it. It has its impact. Over-borrowing has affected us badly. So why should government borrow when it doesn't need to? But if you borrow to do the right thing, I think it is still important because we need to keep the wheels of industry running. And by doing so, government expenditure is key. So we have to have a good balance between the expenditure and the efficiency and the borrowing and all that. If you do all that very well, then you can be on a good trajectory for development. I think this is very, very important. The last thing I would like to say is that this IMF intervention, if you want to have better impact, it is also how we use the resources that have come in. I know that the money that is coming in is not so big compared to the size of the economy. But apart from the stability that we're experiencing, even the little that has come in, how do we channel it to the productive sector? Because if we channel it to the productive sector, it will have a positive multiplier effect. If we channel to consumption, 2-3 years down the line, come back to the same point. So the usage of the little resources we get and then the resources we generate is very key. I think we have experienced something in recent times. The Russia-Ukraine war, the pandemic, it all told us a big story that we can't do away with local production. We can't do away with industry. Today, jobs are suffering. A lot of the companies are downsizing, and that's a fact. We need to have the stability to bring back the jobs.
But Mr. Kobwa, that was where I want to make that rude intervention that with respect to what has happened, are we now going to see a freeze on the cuts, the layoffs, and the downsizing from the manufacturing sectors?
Well, when it comes to freeze, I think for the IMF condition, it is more of the government side that we are hearing that there could be some employment. But private sector, there's no freeze on anybody, except that private sector operates on a principle of survival and sustainability, and then return on investment. And therefore, if the economy, the stability we are experiencing continues, there will be no point in downsizing. But if that doesn't continue, then for sure, for survival purposes, And for sustainability of return on investment, you would have to downsize. At this moment, the companies are not making profit. I can tell you several companies that are making losses. And some of them are on the stock exchange. So it's public knowledge. They are not making profit. But the numbers are there. But if you are not making profit and you can sustain your operations, and for most companies, the last thing they want to do is to downsize, is to sack people. Sometimes they use all kinds of means, maybe reduce the permanent workers to casual workers and all that, just to be able to survive. They wouldn't like to downsize because you don't want to lose your core labor force. So that's the last resort. However, at this moment, I can't guarantee that we'll continue to have significant growth in jobs. We need to have the stability throughout the year, and then looking forward, we'll see how we can grow the jobs.
Uncle Joe Jackson Dallas, and I'll wrap up quickly with you and take a break and come back again. I'm very interested in the financial space and the banking space as well. With respect to what has happened, and Joe, just a quick wrap from you and we'll take a break. I tell you, we've got our program extended to 10:30 for this PM Express because we engage in businesses in terms of how this program is affecting them. So, okay, Joe, let me get a quick one from you and go for a break and come back. What is this? I look at the banking space, the finance space, and their numbers have been hit badly. Is this good? What will be the impact on lending, credit extension from your end?
Well, listen, the first thing is that you've got to look at two things. Number one is that the rates are still going to be high. The rates even from the central bank are high. So if you're going to be borrowing, the rates are not going to come down as quickly as you think. That's number one. Number two is there the capacity to borrow? Because we'll be looking very carefully at the companies you lend to and making sure that they can repay. Because remember that your balance sheets are already sick. So you've got to be very careful about lending. So you're going to see care, a lot of care about lending, not going out for so much risk, and high rates. That does not exactly bode well for businesses because your banks are scrutinizing you carefully, and your the rates are still very high. So really, in the near future, and I'm talking the next 6 to 12 months, borrowing is not going to be easy.
I'll take a break and I'll come back. But if I can't borrow, how can I grow the business? This is PM Express Business Edition. As you look at Ghana's IMF program and impact on business, I'm engaging CEOs from wider space of the industry when it comes to manufacturing, commerce, finance, and the oil space. We'll take a short break and we'll come back as we have an extended PM Express up to 10:30 as we talk about the IMF program and the impact on businesses. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. As you look at the impact of the IMF program on businesses, and some would say they might be the biggest casualties of this program. But how are they also strategizing to get out of this as you engage all these players in the various sectors of the economy? Abudu Abuaji is the chief executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And for you, let's look forward. I mean, the outlook for you, and that's something I want to get all of you people your thought also on. There's supposed to be a mid-year budget review, and some are saying that it is the best opportunity to reset things and put things in perspective and get it right. Your expectations and what do you think that we should be doing as we work towards this mid-year budget review to try and reset things?
Well, I think it's a good opportunity. I think it's the first time that we are going to see a total overhaul of a mid-year budget. Previously, you see some few changes. With this IMF deal, it looks as if that the budget we did for 2023, part of it is thrown overboard. There's a need for us to reset it up. In fact, I would have loved that the government will look at some mitigation measures for businesses. The taxes are just too much. We are not relenting on our dialogue or pursue for the government.
You're still going to push hard.
Exactly. We are going to push hard. In fact, we are asking that they broaden the tax net. They get other people to also be paying the taxes rather than piling it up on the few who are paying. Out of the 15 million and only 5 million are paying, and you want to put more on them, we will continuously engage government to look at the mitigation measure. It's important that we use the media budget to also bring certain level of assurance to businesses that it may be difficult, but in the end, all of us will benefit. For me, the timing is good. Let's move forward with the media budget. We are waiting patiently to see what the government will do, and we are readily available to support government, to engage them. So that if there's any recommendations, we can also offer to government to ensure that the media budget that is coming will get a buy-in of everybody, which will include all the conditionalities that have been set in there.
I mean, first, we're just reviewing the estimates, and that could be the reviewing the estimates. But it appears that there might have to be even a whole new budget.
Yes.
Because things have to be changed.
Yes. I mean, things have totally changed from the budget they prepared. Even though in the 2023 budget, you see some of the conditions that were set up by IMF in them. They were prior conditions that were supposed to be for us to meet before we get it. But now we have the deal. There are things that they have to factor into the budget so that what we want to achieve in terms of the economic growth are all part of the media budget. So we are not going to see the ones that you have just few estimates and looking at what will happen and then coming out with the variances and the way forward. This, I think, is going to be a total overhaul of the budget, a sort of a complete budget that will capture all the things that are stated in the IMF deal.
It looks like you're quite aggressive on the taxes issue, because some are saying that if you look at this program, it's heavy on revenue. That might not necessarily be new taxes per se, but it appears as anchored on raising the required revenue to fund the budget.
Well, a part of it, if you peruse the document, clearly states that compliance in our tax system is low. So there is a part of it that's ensuring that there will be an increased compliance. So those who are not paying will now begin to pay. We need to look at that. And also look at how those who are paying, we don't impose more taxes on them. And I think the GRA is coming up now with more strategies, trying to digitize the activities to ensure that we will be more people. That is what we are looking at. And I think it's very, very, very much important that we do that. The IMF deal, we are aware the challenges will be there. We are aware that in the end, all of us are going to benefit. But they shouldn't do it in such a way that at the end of it, we create a problem which is even major for us to resolve. And I think that the media budget is the way out.
Some have said that a 4-year program could have been better because it appears it's a crash fiscal consolidation program.
If you look at it, it looks too compact and doesn't give room for relief for businesses, for consumers, and also even the vulnerable. There is some level of mitigation for the vulnerable, but I didn't see any mitigation for business. I don't know how we could have extended it to the 4 years. That would have been better because at least we'll get some relief and space.
Yeah, more the space rather.
More the space for all of us to get used to the system and also get out of this difficult situation. But I think that looking at where we have reached, we needed a more compact and comprehensive IMF deal. A deal that will pinch us, give us a wake-up call that we need to do something drastic to our revenue and also to our expenditure. That is what we've gotten. If probably they had extended it to 4 years, I think it wouldn't have been in the interest of even our creditors, those who are saying that we are giving you money for this, or we're giving you this space. You have to pay back this money at this time, and you are asking for more. I think probably it would have affected the assurance that we got from the Chinese and the rest. But I think that it's too compact. And I think, as I said earlier, it's a wake-up call for all of us. We need to learn something from this IMF. IMF is...
Never again?
Never again. I don't think we should even think about going there. IMF will not force you or come to you. But
your
system, your economic woes and predicament will force you to go to IMF. They are not asking you to do anything different. They are asking you to do
things that they have failed. Automatic adjustment formula,
those things.
cut your code according to your revenue that you've raised, excessive expenditure and all the rest. All these things should have been done. You didn't need an IMF program to force you to do that.
These are things that we should have
done long ago.
Day one, in small bits and pieces, so they will not pile up to this level that we are finding it difficult even to go around it. If there's supposed to be automatic adjustment and you are doing it bit and pieces, there will not be time where you increase utility price, water by over 300%, or electricity within close to 6 months over 75%. The effect will obviously be there. So let us all learn lessons. In fact, COVID has played a role. Russia, Ukraine played a role. But don't let us discount the fact that we have also played a role
in where we are right
now.
Interesting.
If all of us decide that it's COVID, it's Russia, Ukraine, and we are pushing the blame to these external forces, we will not look at the internal, our actions and inactions that have brought us to this level. The ones that we have control are the internal ones. Our excessive borrowing, what do we have to do? Our expenditure. The expenditure, the one that is supporting the productive sectors.
Let's advance the capital there.
The level of corruption, the ones that are going to individual pockets, the ones that are not really supporting, these are the expenditures we are talking about that we have to look at. Subsequently, this is our revenue that we have. This is our expenditure. How do we spend it? Definitely, there will always be a budget deficit. But the extent of the budget deficit is very relevant. If it's so huge, it will take you a longer time for you to fill in. And you have no option than to monetize it and go to the central bank for money. And the effect is that policy rate will go up. People are saying there is no money. Why is the central bank using a policy rate to control inflation? They know the amount of money they have pumped in through the monetization of the deficit. That is why they are mopping up. So they know over billions of cedis. So that is why that's where we are. So we may not necessarily use policy rate to solve our inflation. The other things, the supply side constraint, the imported inflation and all those things, I think that in the end, once we have stability in the foreign exchange market, once we are exporting more, once we are consuming what we produce, we will end up creating an economic environment that will be good for all of us to live in.
Joe Jackson, I get worried about your advice about, listen, hold the tabs in terms of borrowing. And I will look at the banks, they took a hit. So I think that is we've lost Joe Jackson on the line. That I think he's going to come back. Let me come back to Dr. Patrick Ekwe-Kuffour. And I asked you the bit about the gold for oil program, because in the fund program, there are some proposals for it to be reviewed. I knew some of your members had serious concerns with it. I mean, for you, does it breathe a sigh of relief that this program is pushing for us to take a second look at it going forward? Can you unmute Doc, please?
The program came to address a peculiar problem that the government at that time felt that were having difficulty, and that the supply security was in doubt, and there was also an issue of FX availability. You look at the key proponents or what actually culminated in the program being rolled out. All those factors with the IMF coming to town that don't necessarily exist. We also need to take a bit of look at historical antecedents as to what government interventions through using state enterprises or SOEs have also resulted in some time past. Is there a case that government is going to use a state entity like BOS to compete with the private sector, and then also who for the activities of that? These are key questions that maybe when they sit down to review, it will also create a enabling environment for them to do. If they try to continue with that, it may have other repercussions. It's definitely is going to have a toll on NPA, the regulators' revenue generation, because none of the BDCs or those BDCs who have paid their license fee did not necessarily pay for a license fee to be cornered only a percentage of the market. They want to be given the needed, the right climate to conduct their business. And don't also forget these private entities also employ Ghanaians and they also pay their taxes. So it's a bit of a tricky situation there. And the program has obviously impacted on private sector participation, judging from how private sector can also assess the proceeds or the revenue coming from the gold purchases. But if government intends to change their policy with regards to the gold for oil and allow private sector participation and say that, well, as a country, all our revenues that we are going to generate from maybe gold export, we are going to use, let's say, a percentage of it to finance our refined products importation. And by so doing, either through the central bank using, reactivating the forest auction so that both the private sector and the public entities who are interested in importing refined products can go through those competitive processes to also be able to land the product. Or we also can also read from the document that they also indicated the need for BOG to hold on the surrender all gold proceeds and revenues, and that in a way may also guarantee forest availability to the commercial banks that all of us can have access to. But the key to this, especially when you want to reduce inflation, and we all know the impact of petroleum products and transportation on inflation. If we go to the central bank, if we go to the commercial banks to source for dollars and they give it to us at that rate, you automatically expect that the same rate will be passed on to the final consumer. And that is where we can find an innovative way and creative way that the central bank have used in previous situations when the country was in a dire need, that they provided a BOG, BDC forest auction program.
Doc, some would say, and sorry, just a rude intervention, some would say that the gold for oil program was needed then. Going forward, with the stability that we are seeing and even the concerns about the structural issues, maybe the time has come to bring it to an end.
It will be a right call. It will be a right call, but by doing so, we also need to also appreciate that definitely there may be some product that is already imported that they may need to strategically look at how they will ramp up in order also not to create some element of losses. And then as a nation, we need through this program to also reassess the role and functions of some of our SOEs in participating in, especially the downstream, vis-a-vis that of the impact of the private sector participation through government policies, which may not necessarily promote the private sector participation that they are seeking to promote.
I'll come back to you on your final thought on the outlook going forward for the industry and look at what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, and even what is also happening with the OPEC members as well. But Savchimo Kobo, let's come to mid-year budget review. And for manufacturing firms, what are you putting to the table to ensure that the correction that you're looking forward to, now that we are at the fund program, is dealt with through this mid-year of budget estimates?
Well, it is a routine that anytime there's going to be a budget, we go through a process. And for already our process starts with our own members, and we solicit inputs from them, we put it together, and then we send to government. They invite us, and then we have a discussion. We're already in June, and therefore we have already collected quite a number of information and views from our members. So very soon, by next week, our input to government will be going, and we expect that they will invite us and then have further discussions on them. We normally do the budget seminar, and then we make our inputs. And we expect that some of the issues will be taken on board. But basically speaking, when it comes to the budget, we expect significant changes in the budget compared to the previous. Normally, midterm budget reviews are more of a review of what has happened in the first 6 months. It doesn't really result in major policy changes.
But some would say that because of the IMF program, things might be different this time around.
Exactly the point I'm making, that previously we were not experiencing significant changes in policy. There wasn't such a shift because it's consistent throughout the year. But this time around, we expect significant changes in terms of the revenue. So we are very keen, we are monitoring, we are interested in knowing what's going to happen. And budget has two sides, the revenue and then the expenditure. The revenue handles. We are very keen on seeing what's going to be the sources of revenue, because normally government sources is largely taxes. So what's going to be the revenue handles? What are the taxes that are going to be, maybe some are going to be withdrawn, some are going to be increased, whatever, or reduced? We are interested in that because they all have different implications for the economy and for industry in particular. So we are very keen on monitoring that. When it comes to the expenditure, what is going to be the expenditure handles as well? Which areas is government going to spend more? If government is going to spend more on the productive sector, we will be happy with it. We know that some of the infrastructure projects, for example, has virtually come to a halt because of the challenges with revenue and all that. I'll give you a typical example. Between the Barco runabout in Tema and Tamawa refinery and beyond, very terrible road. Some work started today, it's come to a halt. That's a typical industrial area you don't want to live even for a day. But unfortunately, it's come to a halt. And several others. So those ones that is linked directly to your production, we have to get it fixed. So we'll be interested in knowing which of them is coming to the budget for the expenditure. And then when it comes to support for industry, there are several areas that we are expecting a lot more funds to be pushed. Export, for example, is key at this time. We have the one district, one factory. Government is talking of industrialization. Everybody's acknowledging that. And we speak for industries, therefore we have to hammer that. It is important that we strengthen this area and support our export sector. Today, we just started establishing export trade houses. We need resources to be able to do that. So we are very keen on monitoring the budget. And I think that if we get it right, it will help gradually improve the situation. Bear in mind that even on this platform, we talked about the fact that the IMF intervention has been helpful, but we would wish that we don't go back to the IMF. And we can only stop going to the IMF if we manage our resources well, and then we do the right thing. And the right thing is that support the productive sector, create the job, let the private sector generate the revenue, let's be efficient in the management of the revenue we generate, and then we would be able to be on a trajectory of self-sustaining. So I think that is very important, and we should see that right from this midterm budget review and see the significant changes and to point to a lot of direction. Bear in mind that the private sector is also still waiting. Every year they plan their investment. So the direction which we would get from the midterm budget review will inform a lot of investment decisions. If we get it right, the investment will come. We also have a big elephant in the room today, which is in the business sector, what is the Continental Free Trade Agreement. How are we positioning ourselves as Ghanaians to be able to take advantage of it? We were in Kenya a couple of weeks ago, and clearly they are all having plans. I sit in AGA and I get delegation from different parts of Africa. Everybody is targeting the Ghana market. Today, we still have about 70% of our basic consumption of items being imported. And our market is being targeted because we are growing as an economy and we are expanding the middle class. So we should also be targeting other markets. And the only way to do it is to increase the production of goods and services. But to increase that, you must have a competitive business environment. If you don't improve the business environment, we'll have a challenge. So in the midterm budget review, we want to see pointers of this. Let me wrap it up by saying that macroeconomic stability is key. Fortunately, with IMF intervention, we seem to be experiencing that now. We must have indicators pointing to that fact that we're going to sustain the stability in the coming months to the end of the year and then take us to next year in a couple of years to come. So if we have that assurance, then there's confidence. And when there's confidence level is good, people will do the investment. It's the investment that will create the jobs and give us more revenue. So, and revenue here, we must always look at where we get our revenue from. It's not enough to just think of just increasing taxes and getting a certain amount of money and say revenue. It is coming from the sources that helps you to sustain the source and then the operations. That is most important. So I think for the midterm budget review, we are keen on it and we'll be monitoring and see and make the necessary inputs as we always do to support government in this direction.
Mr. Koba, let me wrap up with my guest via Zoom as we bring this program to an end. In terms of in a minute, are you that optimistic about the outlook for your sector and even the economy going forward, i.e. with this IMF program? In a minute, Doc.
Certainly. We are very positive with IMF coming to town. We believe that it will bring the discipline, the discipline and the confidence that is required of our major partners to be able to open the doors for us to continue to trade. And then also, it gives us confidence that at least whatever the situation is, the currency will still be available to help us do that. We expect the IMF program to promote the private sector investment, and especially our members to be competitive to ensure that at least whatever we invest in our operations, with the stable currency, we can recoup our investment. We believe that the IMF program will create that stable currency that will boost confidence as we've already enumerated. However, policies that seek to target innovative and creative ways like the BDC auctioning that were used to somehow bring down inflation and then also to help ensure that prices of petroleum prices were a bit relatively low and to also guarantee products availability and security will be critical, and we hope that the opportunities that this program brings, that they were suggesting periods of review and evaluation, will have the opportunity to be able to engage the IMF and then the necessary state agencies for them to take a critical look about some of the interventions that they want to introduce, which we think may be inimical to the gains that they've made.
Mr. Kobwa, in a minute, your final thoughts going forward for manufacturing firms.
Well, George, I'm very confident. The last thing we want to do is to lose hope, as I always say. And in circumstances like this, we've gone through some challenges. We've managed to survive. I know some companies have gone down. I know some have downsized, but others have survived and others are increasing job creation. So I'm confident that in the coming months, we should be able to work and bring further stability in our businesses and grow the businesses to employ more people. So confidence level is good. I think that the challenges that is confronting us, we need to surmount it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We don't have a choice. But we need to make the right choices. If we make the wrong choices, we'll come back in a few years' time and still go to IMF. I think we should be able to avoid that and move forward. But I'm very confident that we can make it.
Thank you. Magudaba, your final thoughts in a minute as we wrap up this program.
Well, the looks positive.
Wow.
In spite of the difficulties we are going through this short term, but I think that we will get out of it. And it's also important that we position ourselves as businesses to take advantage of the stability and certainty that will be created. But I also suggest that a chunk of the money that will be coming in should be channeled through the productive sector. If you look at the Obatam Packet, there's a project called the Economic Enclave Project that will bring self-sufficiency in agric, in maize, in poultry, in most of the things that we import. I think we need to look at that project. That will bring us all the relief that we need as a country so that we not import, and also most of the things that we are producing, all of us will help in consuming it. It's good IMF is in. It's good we are moving forward. But let's hope that this is the last time that we are going to IMF. We have to go there for something else and not for
technical assistance,
support
or something like
and not for some of these things with the conditionalities that makes it difficult for businesses to grow and survive.
Bangodu Abaji, Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sechuma Kabwa is the Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. Dr. Patrick Okofori, he is the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. And also, Joe Jackson, he's a Director at Dealers Finance. I know that the debate will still go on in your homes and your offices about how this program will impact on businesses and whether it will bring about the needed turnaround that we are all looking forward to, the stability of the economy. My name is George Wiafe, and have a great day.